this is my first time making a video about my bipolar. I did one about my social anxiety. I hope if you didn't see that and you do have social anxiety, I suggest you watch it. So there might be some tips on there, or just maybe some relation that will make you feel not so alone and not so crazy, because we are all in this together and we're not crazy. We just are wired differently, and there's no reason to feel bad about that. So that's a lot of the reason why I've decided to speak out, is because I had a lot of shame and denial, and it's hard to say that you have a problem. It's hard to say that you've been on a psych ward more than once. So I'm here to say you're not alone, and I'm here to just kind of share my experience and how I found out that I was bipolar. And like I said, and I think this is the case with a lot of people, it's paired with anxiety and, of course, depression. I don't get super lows. I get more of the manic highs, and then more of I'll just want to stay in bed all day, but I'm not quite depressed. It's more of just a no energy low. Too anxious to get out of bed, and that kind of all mixes in together with my bipolar. But I just wanted to start. I was kind of diagnosed a year ago, and I think I was somewhat in denial, and I didn't really trust the psychiatrist. So I'll just tell you about what led me into my first stay at a great psych unit, one of the best I know in the state, so I was lucky to be able to go there. The University of Utah's neuropsychiatric unit. But let me tell you how I got there. So I was at Applebee's. I had not slept for days, and at this point I had no idea what bipolar symptoms were. I didn't know that I could even possibly be bipolar at this point. It was not ever even brought up, and I had been seeing psychiatrists since I was 17, 18. So I had not been sleeping, been drinking a ton of energy drinks. That's super hyped. And if you know you have bipolar and you've had a manic episode, you know what that is. I was up for days. I was cleaning. I was talking fast. I was not sleeping. And it was awesome. And I felt really smart. Super smart. All of those things. And I want to touch on that is scary. The scariest part about bipolar manic episodes is that they feel good at the time. You feel smart, you feel sharp, you feel like you can do anything. And that's what's scary, is you are illogical in that sense, because you make bad decisions, whether it's shopping sprees, and like a lot of I don't get it, but highly sexual, just like a lot of risky behaviors, and you think you're logical at the time, so it's scary, and you think it's fun. And if you think about it, it kind of, when you describe it, it is. You're up, you're smiling, you're happy, you're laughing, you're jumping around your house. You think, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but your brain is actually being damaged, literally, when you are having a manic episode. So it is serious, it is scary, and people do need help. It is real. It's not just people being moody. So if you're watching this, and you haven't sought help yet because you think or have been told it's just moody, or you get ups and downs because you're PMSing, or I've been told that, it's not that. It's not. If you're experiencing these symptoms that I'm saying, get to a doctor, get medicated, get some help, because it will take over your life, and not in a good way. So, anyways, back to my first episode. I was at an Applebee's with my mom and my husband, and all I could hear, I couldn't hear the conversation, and I think this was mixed with a panic attack because of my bad anxiety, and I used to have panic attacks all the time. All I could hear was screaming children and really loud people just all around, like, and I couldn't hear the conversation with my husband and my mom. And like I said, at this point I hadn't slept for about 4 days. So I was this is where I broke. My family was telling me that I was talking really loud, even though I felt like I was only trying to barely speak over what I could hear. All the weird, I don't know, your hearing goes weird during a panic attack. So I think that's where that was coming from. And so I was getting frustrated that they were telling me I was loud and I just was panicking. So I didn't want to do that in front of everybody. And I went to the women's room and I just was trying to tell myself to breathe. And some stranger came in and asked me if I was okay. And that's the last thing we want, right? Is a stranger asking us in public if you're okay and you're not, and just F off, please, now. So she was saying stuff to me, and then my mom came in and was telling me, it's okay, you're okay, you're okay. No, I'm not okay. And I knew I wasn't okay. And I think I kind of blacked out at this point. The next thing I remember, I was on the floor in the corner of the handicap stall, cornered by cops. Applebee's manager called the cops on me. And I think my mom and my husband were in there, I'm not sure. Next thing I knew, I was fighting with cops. I was then handcuffed, taken outside. An ambulance showed up, thank God, right behind, as the cops were throwing me headfirst into the back of a cop car while I was in the middle of a damn panic slash, I'm getting panicky just talking about it, panic slash manic episode. Unmedicated for bipolar, barely being treated for anxiety, and being thrown face first into the back of a cop car. So I was kicking, I was screaming, I was just freaking out. And thank God the ambulance showed up and they knew I was not, couldn't go to, I needed mental or, medical attention. The last thing I remember is them giving me 2 shots in my thighs. And then I woke up in the hospital. I was then, after those medications wore off, and they were heavy. I mean, they knocked me out fast. And then I don't really know how I got there, because the University of Utah hospital I ended up at was about a 45-minute drive. And I don't remember getting there. But by the time I got there, I don't know how long I was at the other hospital. I would have to ask my husband now because I don't remember. By the time I got to uni and they were doing my initial talking to me, asking me questions, I remember just smiling and telling them I was fine and I needed to go home and everything was okay. And I was, again, like all of a sudden really, really happy. And was telling them that everything was fine and I didn't need to be here and it was just a simple panic attack and I could go home. I ended up staying there for 6 days. They put me on medication for bipolar, but it was still kind of hands in the air. Did she have a panic attack? Did she have a full-blown manic attack? It just wasn't really, I didn't follow up on it well enough. And then earlier this year, I kind of had this bipolar in my mind. I'm dealing with my social anxiety with a psychiatrist, and it manifested, I was working graveyard shifts, and it once again manifested by not sleeping for days. So at this point, I probably was at 4 days. I was at work. A lot of my coworkers thought that I was on drugs at work, and I don't know what if that was rumors or if I was saying some stuff that I didn't remember. But I know I was going through mania now that I look back at it. This time, I blue slipped myself because I packed my car full of random stuff, literally packed it, and was speeding on my way to a pawn shop to buy a pink watch that I could have just went and bought. And I realized it was very irrational and that I was literally jumping around my house. I just knew something just snapped, and I pulled over and I realized that I would get in a lot of trouble by the cops because I'm sure I looked like I was on some methamphetamine or something. That's kind of what we look crazy. We look that happy and that awake that we look like we're going crazy, and we don't think so. So I called my dad and my mom and my husband, and I told them, I'm at this gas station, come get me, I will be arrested. I think I was terrified from my past experience. And, geez, sorry, I'm like shaking just talking about this. So this time I blue slipped myself into a local hospital. I stayed the night, and they finally found a room about 2.5 hours away from my home to get me into. So I was unmedicated for over 24 hours that I was just left in the ER while they were trying to find a bed for me. And I was kind of ignored by the nurses, and it was really hard being there. But if they're not trained in psychiatry, they're just ER docs, ER nurses. They don't really know what to, they're just holding you until you go somewhere else. But either way, I knew I needed help. So I finally got into this place 2.5 hours away. And I knew at that point that I was bipolar. And I knew that it was gonna be a long road. And that night, I was still in mania. And I called my husband and told him I have blue slipped myself. And I knew from the previous time, there's a blue slip, pink slip, probably another one. Pink slip is if you are forced to be there, if you're put there. Blue slipped is if you check yourself in. And you can leave earlier if you're blue slipped, is what I was thinking, but really it's just up to the psychiatrist that is on if you get to go home or not. So that night I was still, even though I had checked myself in and I knew I needed help, I remember calling my husband and saying, I think I can get myself out of here tonight. You know, they put me on some medication for bipolar. I get it. I had a manic attack. I'm good now. I still didn't know I was still manic. And I was there for about 6 days. And it took me about half that time really to get out of that manic state and go to group and get help and get out of there. And I wish I could have stayed longer, honestly, at the end. Sadly, most insurances cover, if you do have insurance, only 5 or 6 days. So anyways, I have been on medication and therapy, but I just wanted to do this first one to kind of describe myself. I just want to say with this first video, thanks for listening to my crazy stories. I think if you're watching this, you probably have 1 or 2 of your own. And if you have not gotten help yet, get help. It's not a bad thing to get help. It's a bad thing not to get help. So, and get some support, people. And I also want to say, a lot of people are going to tell you that everything's going to be okay and everything's going to be fine. And if you just get on that right medication and get that right therapist and, you know,
go exercise every day and do this and you'll be fine. No, it's not going to be fine. We can manage it, and we'll have great days and we'll have horrible days. So I want to be here to say it is a fight. We are in the boxing ring with our mental disorders, but we can work with them and fight those bad days and strive for more good days than bad days. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next